Oh, wow, I was doing that. Excuse me. Welcome back, guys. So we were studying earlier, and we were studying a lot about how to keep a network up and running, mostly. And now we're on network attacks, and that's what we're gonna get into now. Network attacks. So let's get down. Let's get our notes out. Let's dig in, and let's get into this. So the first thing we're gonna start out with network attacks is the classic DOS attack, which occurs when one machine continuously gets flooded with service requests. Basically, like whenever you send a request to a web server and say, hey, I want this page, it just keeps doing that repeatedly, so it can't really, it gets overwhelmed and just crashes it. Man, I swear I got something on my chin. I got something on my chin whenever I was drinking some tea earlier, and I think it was, basically from drinking the tea. But anyways, now we're going to talk about the different types of DOS attacks. And the first one is TCP sign flood. It occurs when an attacker initiates multiple TCP sessions, but never completes them. Then you have a Smurf attack, also known as a ICMP flood. Occurs when an attacker sends a ping to a subnet broadcast address with the source IP spoofed to be that of a victim server. Then you have the DDoS attack, which is the same thing as a DOS attack, except the DOS attack, except the DDoS attack has multiple computers attacking the server. So in other words, they're called botnets, which is a collection of compromised computers under the control of a master computer. So one computer is controlling to a bunch of zombie computers, which is what the individual computers are called, zombies. So a bunch of zombies make up a botnet, and the botnet is correlated with a DDoS attack. Now, we're going to talk about some general attacks. So the general attacks are the man-in-the-middle, or also known as the on-path attack, and that's good to know because the CompTIA Network Plus could use either or on-path or the other, and my phone's going off for some reason. Okay. Then there's session hijacking, DNS poisoning, DNSSEC, which I didn't know what that was, but I know what it is now. And then there's rogue DHCP server. I don't know why they put DNSSEC in here, but I'll explain what it is here in a second. So the on-path / man-in-the-middle attack occurs when an attacker puts themselves between the victim and the intended destination. So basically, they can see, in other words, they can see exactly what's going on they can see what's going on, what information's being sent between those two clients, or server and client, whatever you want to call it. And then there's session hijacking, which occurs when an attacker guesses the session ID that is in use between a client and a server and takes over the authentication session. And then DNS poisoning, which occurs when an attacker manipulates known vulnerabilities within the DNS to reroute traffic from one site to a fake version of the site. So I thought that was a pretty cool one, DNS poisoning. And I wanted to kind of like talk about that. I just think it's cool how, like, for example, let's say we go to YouTube and then you actually type in YouTube, and you go to a completely different site so someone can steal all that information. It's so smart, but the only issue is there's probably such good security out there, you're not going to hit that one off. No way. And then they put DNSSEC in here, which stands for DNS security, I'm assuming. Because it literally says uses encrypted digital signatures when passing DNS information between servers to help protect it from poisoning. So I guess they just put that in there as like, hey, this is there. You can use this to prevent this from happening. And then there's a rogue DHCP server, and that's just a DHCP server on a network that is not under administrative control of network administrators. So I guess any DHCP server that is not controlled by network administrators. Okay, and that was general network attacks. So far, we've covered... We've covered denial of service, and then we covered general network attacks, and now we're moving on to spoofing attacks. And I'm gonna have to turn my AC on because I'm burnt. Like, I literally felt sweat going down the side of my face just now. I guess I'm just not used to talking this much. Okay, anyways. Now we have spoofing attacks. Spoofing occurs when an attacker essentially falsifies their identity. They pretend to be someone else. I'm gonna grab my tea. So, there is a thing called IP spoofing. Modifying the source address of an IP packet to hide the identity of the sender or impersonate another client. So basically, you're changing the IP of your packet or someone else's packet, if that's a possibility, so that they don't think that it's you, basically. And then there's MAC spoofing, changing the MAC address to pretend to be someone else. And then there's MAC filtering, which isn't technically an attack, but it relies on a list of all known authorized MAC addresses, meaning if you want to get on someone's network and you have a MAC filter, your MAC address has to be on a whitelist in order to access that network. And then there's ARP spoofing, because there is ARP messages, but I can't remember. I thought it sent it out to everyone. I thought it was like a broadcast, though. It says sending falsified ARP messages over a local area network. ARP spoof attack can be used as a precursor to other attacks. Interesting. I was about to say, because an ARP request is basically saying to all computers on a network, hey, I need your MAC address because I want to be able to communicate with you, basically. And then there's VLAN hopping. This is a cool one. I like this one. The ability to send traffic from one VLAN into another VLAN. Okay? Bypassing the VLAN segmentation you have configured within the Layer 2 network. So that's really cool, to be able to take traffic from one VLAN and hop it over to another VLAN. Now, if you're going to do that, I mean, that's genius. I love that. Double tagging, I'm not sure what that is. Connecting to an interface on a switch using access mode with the same VLAN as the native untagged VLAN on the trunk. Okay. That's a mouthful. And then there's switch spoofing, attempting to conduct a dynamic trunking protocol negotiation. No, let me see how much. Okay. We only have a few more pages. Now we're going to get into malware. Malware is designed to infiltrate a computer system, possibly damage it without the user's knowledge or consent. That's what malware is, basically, is trying to damage the user or computer, not really technically the user, but the computer, without the user knowing about it. That's what malware is. So you have the classic virus, which is made up of malicious code that is run on your machine without your knowledge. And infects it whenever the code is run. So made up of malicious code that is run on a machine without the user's knowledge and infects it whenever you run the code. So it's basically like if you download a software, I guess, and you run that software, and that software has a virus on it, you're running that code, and it's getting injected to the computer. And that's what a virus is. It's usually like an application that's going to do it. So a virus is a type of malware, is what I'd call it. So there's also worm, a piece of malicious software so a virus can't be replicated though. Okay? Like it can in terms of the software, right? But a worm, like I guess if you said, hey man, I got this cool software and you could send it to your buddy, but that's like the only way it can be replicated. Now a worm is a piece of malicious software that can replicate itself. So a virus can't replicate itself, but a worm can. And that's even without the user interaction too. Then you have Trojan Horse, which is a piece of malicious software, which is designed as a piece of harmless, something that seems harmless, but when you run it, it actually does bad stuff in the background. This is a new one I haven't seen before called RAT, Remote Access Trojan. It provides the attacker with remote control of the victim's machine, which can cause some serious damage. And if that ever happens to you, I highly recommend turning your computer off. And then there's ransomware. It restricts access to a system, to a person's computer or files until they get a payment, basically. Then there's spyware, which means it gathers a bunch of information about your computer without your consent. Keyloggers record your keystrokes. Rootkit is designed to gain administrative control over a computer system or network device without being detected. And now we have wireless attacks, social engineering attacks, and that'll be it. So we're almost done with this chapter, pretty much. Let's go ahead and take like a little 5-minute break. Because I am dying here. We will finish this though. So let's just take like a 2-minute break, because I think it's 128. 158, I mean. But yeah, we'll just take a 2-minute break. I'm gonna get up to stretch my back, and then come back, and we'll finish up wireless attacks and the other attack that I mentioned earlier. Okay, I am back. And those 2 minutes went by way too fast. I think I only had like a minute due to it being like almost 158 or almost 159 or something. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll take a break, and then I'll be back with the last section that we're gonna cover today, and then I'm gonna call it a day and just play some games. Oh, my throat's hurting. Okay, wireless attack. Rogue access point, which is basically just like a wireless access point that doesn't belong to the company, and if you connect to it, then a person can actually steal information from your computer. Shadow IT, use of IT systems, software, applications, or services without explicit approval of IT department. Evil Twin, kind of just like Rogue Access Point. It's just a wireless access point that uses it. Well, Evil Twin uses a different name. Then the authentication attempts to interrupt communication between an end user and the wireless access point. Then we have a dictionary attack, which is where a person tries to guess passwords based on a dictionary, like based on a software. Well, yeah. So basically, they guess the password is what a dictionary attack. That guesses the password by attempting to check every single word or phrase contained within a word list. That's what a dictionary attack is. Now, they make actually rainbow dictionary attacks as well, which is more advanced than a dictionary. And then there's brute force attacks, where the user just tries to guess it, like keeps on typing in passwords. And then there's a hybrid, which is a combination of dictionary and brute force. And then there's wireless interception, captures wireless data packets as they go across the airwave. Then there's social engineering attacks, and I think this is the last section in which we'll talk about the different attacks. Okay, social engineering. Any attempt to manipulate users to reveal confidential information or perform actions decremented to a system's security. So basically, social engineering is revealing passwords, stuff like that. Information that people can use to harm the company or the user, whatever. That's social engineering. Then there's phishing. Basically sending an email in an attempt to get a user to click on the link. That's interesting. Sending out emails to capture the most people and doesn't really target any particular person or group. Basically sending emails with a link that has a virus in it. That's basically phishing. Spear phishing is more specific. It's targeting someone. Targeting someone you have a grudge against, targeting someone that you know. That's basically spear phishing. And then whaling is when you focus on a key executives within organizations, CEOs, managers. That's whaling. Tailgating is entering a secure area in a building and following an authorized person without their knowledge. Piggybacking, similar to tailgating, but occurs when with the employee's knowledge or consent. Shoulder surfing, just coming up behind someone and trying to get their password, basically. Dumpster diving, scavenging for personal information in garbage or recycling containers. There's two more attacks, and that would be an insider threat, which is a someone who essentially used to work for a company or currently works for the company, and they want to cause it harm by putting viruses on the computer, stuff like that. And then there's a logic bomb, which is a specific type of malware that is tied to either a logical event or a specific time. And that basically makes up network attacks. Now, I do want to review it really quick. So we talked about DOS attacks and their different types. We talked about some of the general network attacks, which are like on-path, session hijacking, DNS poisoning, and rogue DHCP server. We talked about the different spoofing attacks, which is basically just changing your identity on a computer. We talked about malware, basically causing the computers harm without our consent. And we talked about wireless attacks, basically putting wireless access points, connecting it to a network, and then accessing it and using the information on it, or using systems that don't belong to you. Let's see. We talked about social engineering, basically using your social skills in order to steal information, such as phishing, whaling, tailgating, shoulder surfing. And we talked about the insider threat and the logic bomb. And that is going to end our session today. I just want to say thank you for listening. And that's the third topic we talked about today, but we are going to be back, and we're going to be talking about, well, let me see what we talked about, because I cannot remember. Because that was network attacks. It's Tuesday. So the last thing we're going to talk about is network hardening, making our systems hard to get attacked, basically. And that's going to be the last section for today. And after network hardening, we're going to call it a day. And be playing some games the rest of the day. Probably Persona. Actually, might play Persona on my Steam Deck. Just lay down and play it on my Steam Deck. But anyways, you guys have a good one. I'll be back probably in about an hour. So we'll probably start at 3 or something like that. And then after that, after we cover network hardening, then that's when we're going to move on to tomorrow's subjects, which tomorrow's is going to be network policies, security, routing, and wireless networks. So